I want to go over this little concept of local currencies, and I'm going to actually kind of preface this with something else that probably, well, think about it anyway. Everybody is aware that we're no longer on a gold standard and that type of stuff. Actually, going back to a gold standard really wouldn't eliminate the problem so much. The problem is we got the central bank. You got to remember, what did Biddle's central bank use back before Andrew Jackson? What was his name? Biddle, the one with the central bank that President Andrew Jackson fought against in the 1830s and got rid of it. And they were using gold back then too. They were using gold. Central banks were using gold. What was the catch where they were raking in money and screwing people over by having a central bank was the fact that they charged interest. So in other words, money always had interest attached to it. It wasn't free and clear. That's the whole key. Sometimes, I don't want to get on with the popular people pushing the gold is money stuff, but say, we got to this gold standard again. The real problem is you don't want a central bank, a private bank, having control of the money supply, and you don't want them charging interest. Money should come into existence interest-free, debt-free. Our money comes into existence as a form of a loan, and there's interest attached to it. So it's not even exactly over the gold standard itself. It's really over who has control of that. And that was actually in the Constitution. That's something a lot of people aren't mentioning either. But that actually is the right angle. Now this is about the local currencies. Actually, this is right off of Wikipedia, but they have it in here nice and succinctly, so it's good. It's a good little lesson. This was during the Great Depression in Austria. The Wurgel experiment in his town, Wurgel, I guess that's how you say that, was conducted from July 1932 to November 1933. It's a classic example of the potential efficiency of local currencies. Wurgel, a small town in Austria with 4,000 inhabitants, introduced a local script during the Great Depression. By 1932, unemployment in Wurgel had risen to 30%. The local government had amassed debts of 1.3 million Austrian shillings AS, whatever, that's what they call them, AS, against cash reserves of only 40,000. So they had a hell of a lot of debt and very little cash. Local construction and civil maintenance had come to a standstill on the initiative of the town's mayor, Michael Alphabet Soup. The local government printed 32,000 labor certificates, which carried a negative 1% monthly interest rate and could be converted into shillings at 98% of face value. An equivalent amount in shillings, Austrian shillings, were deposited in a local bank to cover for the certificates that were issued by, as the certificates being a local script, in case people decided to do a mass redemption of the local script for Austrian shillings, right? And that money that was deposited earned some interest for the government. So in effect, they kind of like doubled their money supply, right? The certificates, the script, whatever, it was a local script, circulated so rapidly that only 12,000 were ever actually put into circulation. According to reports by the mayor and economists of the day who studied the experiment, the script was readily accepted by local merchants and a local population. It used the script to carry out 100,000 Austrian shillings in public works projects involving construction and repairs of roads, bridges, tanks, drainage systems, factories, and buildings. The script was also accepted as legal tender for payment of local taxes. In the 1 year the currency was in circulation, it circulated 13 times faster than the official shilling and served as a catalyst to the local economy. And actually I'm going to talk about the velocity of money after this. kind of unrelated, but something people should keep in mind. The heavy arrears and the local tax collection declined dramatically. Local government revenue rose from 2,400 Austrian shillings in 1931 to 20,400 in 1932, almost 10 times the money the government got. Unemployment was eliminated while it remained very high throughout the rest of the country in Austria. No increases in prices were observed. How's that? Based on the dramatic success of the Wurgel experiment, several other communities involved similar scripts. In other words, they issued currency directly into the economy, interest-free. Debt-free, interest-free. Well, debt-free, interest-free is pretty much the same thing. In spite of the tangible, this is really the key to the whole thing. In spite of the tangible benefits of the program, it met with stiff opposition from the Regional Socialist Party and from the Austrian Central Bank, which opposed the local currency as an infringement on its powers over the currency. Yeah, because they're collecting interest. That's the thing. They want interest. We give you money, you pay us something back. And, that can work that way with gold. So, sometimes, the whole answer isn't the gold standard. It's interest-free standard. I want to point out something else. Kind of like, one thing is the velocity of money. They actually didn't issue everything they could have. They printed 32,000 of these certificates, right? They only issued 12,000 of them. That's all they needed. Now, you know what's going on with the Federal Reserve. They're pushing more and more money out there, but it's not really reaching the economy per se. It's kind of being held by big banks and big business. Wait. When the dam breaks, that money's going to come flying out, and we're going to have some serious inflation. That's really the deal when they talk about unintended consequences of central banks. They might lose a little more control about of the inflation more than they intend to sometime in the future, because that money is not being circulated yet. There's in other words, in this situation, they made up 32,000 of these script local currency, but they only put 12,000 into circulation, just enough to do the job. But it was actually getting into where it was being used. It was being used for these public works and construction and different things. What's going on today? It's being hoarded by big banks. Wait till that money gets out into the real economy. We're going to have some serious inflation. I figured I'd throw that in there as an adjunct, but I think it's interesting. Something else, I know there's this thing in the back of people's head about gold and silver, how it's going to turn around the economy. Not necessarily. Well, one thing I just kind of pointed out, you can use local fiat script as long as it's interest-free, debt-free, and it's controlled where they're not going to just throw a whole pile of paper out there. They just put the minimum need to do the job. It's fine. It works fine, as long as it actually gets down into the real economy. But the real progression of mankind was not so much from gold and silver. It was from cheap energy. The first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution basically from the mid-1800s to World War I, and the second industrial revolution after that. Now, there's another thing. I don't know who makes up these things, but it was like the European Parliament, in a formal declaration passed in 2007, this concept of the third industrial revolution, based upon 5 pillars: shifting to renewable energy, converting buildings into power plants, hydrogen and other energy storage technology, smart grid, plug-in electric, hybrid, and fuel cell based cars instead of transportation. I want to point out something. I said this before about palladium. It's still a metal that's being ignored like crazy. It really shouldn't be, because the fundamentals on palladium are a hell of a lot stronger than they are on silver. The thing that's wrong with palladium is it is never used as money, but I think that's really not the problem with the economy. The problem is the money is not interest free. It comes about in a form of debt. Even if it was a gold standard, the banks would lease the gold. Like, here, we leased it to you, and here's a piece of paper that says you're leasing gold. You still got to pay us interest. They're a bunch of bloodsuckers, basically. How's that? I mean, put it plain English. The central bank's got a racket, and they're bloodsuckers. If you issue money directly from the Congress, even if it was fiat notes, and it went right out directly into the economy for like public works projects or whatever it is, it would do a lot of good. It would get circulated directly where people are using it, and people would work for it because they will recognize it as money, even if it's paper. The fact is, you don't want to have it interest, charging people interest for it. It's got to be debt free. But as far as an investment for the future, this is where the whole world is going to. Renewable energy. And a lot of times, that means palladium too. But hydrogen, that spells palladium a lot of different ways. Because hydrogen, like as far as with hydrogen production, palladium is the only metal out there that absorbs 900 times its volume of hydrogen at room temperature. So it's essential for hydrogen production, hydrogen storage, fuel cells, and hydrogen purification. So hydrogen is going to be extremely abundant fuel because basically it can't be split from water, and I think there's some suppressed technology out there that it probably can be split from water a lot cheaper. All companies don't want people to know that, but we've seen some things from Stanley Myers Automobile and Genepacks in Japan back in 2008 where they had engines that were able to split off hydrogen from water efficiently. So, but that's going to be a major use for palladium. Now you're talking a metal that is very, very rare compared to even gold. It makes silver look like lead or copper compared to the rarity of palladium compared to silver. It's ridiculous. Another thing is, transportation going into a lot more hybrids. Hybrids will use 30% more palladium. And when you're figuring there's growing middle class that's going on, that metal is actually going to take off like crazy. I don't know. I think people are missing a boat with this thing. But I'm going to say it a couple of times in every one of these videos, various reasons. But this is something to look at. The third industrial revolution, and palladium is going to play a major role. It's not going to be money, but it's going to go up in money. I can tell you that. And I think the real problem with our currency is not so much that it's not backed by gold or silver. It's the fact that it comes about in the form of a loan, so it has interest attached to it. The damn stuff could actually be paper. And as long as Congress was the one that was controlling the paper, yeah, I know they could screw up there too, but at least the people have more say-so in what goes on then. If the people want to screw up their own currency, they can vote in whoever the hell they want, but the people will figure that out real quick. It's when you have private bankers in charge of the currency and they charge you interest for it, whether it's backed by gold or not. As long as they're charging you interest and loaning money to the government with an interest rate, the game is never going to change. It's not so much that it's backed by gold. It's got to be interest free, free of debt.